I'm sure that everyone watching this is at least remotely familiar with the Muppets. Little felt fellas that get into no shortage of wholesome hijinks and antics. But what if those antics weren't so wholesome? What if these puppets f***ed? The 2008 movie The Happytime Murders set out to answer that question. Granted, I don't think anyone was really asking that question at the time, but they answered it nonetheless. And that answer is now nothing more than a few clicks and a Netflix subscription away. So why the hell not? The movie begins with a voiceover by Phil Phillips, Puppet PI. It's quickly established that this story takes place in a world where puppets and humans live side by side, albeit with the former being substantially lower on the social hierarchy than the latter. The plot is set into motion when Phil meets a puppet in need of his assistance, Sandra White. Miss White is being blackmailed by way of lewd pictures and seeks the help of the PI in keeping her promiscuous proclivities private. The fuzzy gumshoe is now on the case and follows up on his first lead, a puppet-themed sex shop. It is here that we are introduced to the Happytime Gang, a beloved sitcom from days gone by featuring several puppets and a singular human. While he is snooping, the owner of the store and former Happytime's cast member is slain execution style. The police arrive on the scene and the audience gleans a bit of insight into Phil's past when his former partner on the force arrives. The two butt heads and part ways, but not before it is established that this was not simply a robbery gone wrong, but an intentional assassination. Flash forward a bit and another former cast member is murdered. This time it's Phil's brother's turn to bite the big one. Phil and his former partner Connie begrudgingly reunite to work the case, and the pattern of murders is laid out. Due to contract stipulations, it would seem as if someone is killing all the members of the sitcom in order to get more syndication income. The duo sets out to track down the remaining members of the cast and crack the case. The plot progresses and puppets perish, as one by one the majority of the former cast is killed, culminating with Jenny, the only human member of the cast, and Phil's ex-girlfriend being blown up when she gets into her car. Phil is on the scene when this happens and is arrested as the police believe him to be the culprit. Connie doesn't buy it though. She knows that her former partner is innocent and busts him out of jail. The two make amends for past wrongdoings and set out to find the true killer. After a bit of snooping, it's revealed that the real masterminds behind the murder are Miss White and Jenny. The antagonists attempt to kill Phil and abscond with the cash, but are eventually thwarted in their endeavors by Phil and Connie. The story comes to a close, with Phil being cleared of all charges and being reinstated into the police force. Everyone has a good laugh at the expense of Joel McHale and lives happily ever after. This movie is weird. It's the kind of weird that I personally enjoy. It's not odd simply for the sake of being odd, but instead is attempting something completely novel. The entire premise of the movie, a violent, raunchy, puppet-based detective story, is something that hasn't been done before. Sure, there are comparisons to be drawn between the Happytime Murders and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but even still, the fact that this movie got made was an attempt by all involved to do something relatively unique, and that at least should be acknowledged. What really stood out about this movie for me is the tone. There's a tightrope to be walked between an ultra-gritty crime movie and a silly puppet movie, and I feel like that tightrope was walked as well as can be expected. There aren't any dark crime movie moments because that would feel a bit out of place in a movie starring puppets. The dark and horrible things that would typically happen to humans in a movie like this happen to puppets and are played for laughs. Instead of blood erupting when a character gets killed, we get bits of fluff strewn everywhere. Instead of doing lines of blow, the puppets do lines of sugar. This movie strikes what I feel to be a solid balance between truly absurd comic sensibilities and homages to classic detective tropes. Another positive thing that is worth mentioning is the puppetry itself. There are so many puppets in this movie and all of them are unique and well designed. Furthermore, the actual puppeteering of these characters is executed quite well, or at least as well as can be expected. Puppet fight scenes are more than likely a difficult thing to pull off, but Henson Alternative executed these and other moments with more competence than anyone else likely could. This movie is weird. Despite the fact that I personally enjoy weird movies like this, it's entirely understandable that what I see as good, others could see as bad in this instance. The bizarre nature of the movie makes the jokes very feast or famine. Sometimes the over-the-top absurdity lands, and sometimes it really doesn't. Strangeness aside, the story is the primary area in which I feel the movie is lacking. The plot is about as cookie-cutter as they come. If you've seen basically any detective movie before, you already know the overarching plot of this movie. There are twists and turns theoretically, but the movie is not so twisty or turny that there is any sense of genuine mystery about it. In furtherance of this point, the character development is almost non-existent. The detective is a detective, the partner is a partner, the chief is a chief, and so on. None of them stray at all from the trope that they are embodying, and tropey characters in conjunction with a tropey plot means that audiences in search of intrigue will be left feeling disappointed. Finally, there is an issue with the social commentary that this film is attempting to convey. One of the main aspects of this world is that puppets are discriminated against, and this could have been used to say something legitimate about bigotry, but is never really present in the movie. We get a sense that puppets are second-class citizens throughout the movie, but this fact is used more as a plot device than a meaningful statement. I'm unsure of whether or not this movie is even the proper vehicle for such commentary, so it's likely for the best that it wasn't really expanded upon, but that begs the question. Why even have such a serious subject as part of your world build if it's not going to be taken seriously? Whether or not something is worth one's time is always a subjective matter. Never has this statement been more true than in the Happytime Murders. This movie failed at the box office and has abysmal reviews on Rotten Tomatoes and other movie scoring sites. If those are the sole metrics by which one gauges the quality of a movie, then the Happytime Murders is assuredly a bad movie. For my part, however, I would slightly disagree with the popular opinion. That being said, I'm making no claims that this is a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's not groundbreaking cinema bursting at the seams with a compelling plot or characters. The humor is hit or miss, and the performances by the human actors are nothing to write home about. As I said, I do not believe this to be a good movie. However, I do believe it to be an interesting movie. Say what you will about the characters, the plot, the jokes, etc., but this movie is nothing if not unique. I have never seen another movie like this before, and I would be willing to bet that I will never see another movie like this again. And in an era of cinema where everything just seems so formulaic, it's a breath of fresh air to see a movie doing something so different. All that being said, I would recommend checking this movie out while it's on Netflix, if for no other reason than a sense of morbid curiosity.